It was unfortunate, but not a total disaster, that my friend, Mr. Arnold, found himself unable, around Christmas time, as he wrote to me, I was unable to find anyone that would take me on. It was that dead time. I could go to my brother's for Christmas, but he was then going away. So, not to be a nuisance to anyone, I arranged a trip to an inn. In the middle of England it was. In those beautiful rural counties, the shires that no one goes to. Herefordshire, on the border with Gloucestershire. And I took the train. I wasn't expecting much from the inn, and so I wasn't terribly disappointed. I had been there a day and had already run the gamut of rewarding pursuits that time of year, the merits of the duck pond, the memories of chateaux long since, or castles long since ruined, all of that. And I asked the landlord whether he was anything anyone had ever recommended, like ever, and he said, no, there's a walk, they take it in summer. They go the next village but one by the little train that will run at 11 o'clock today. Stanton Drew, they call it. You go there, it's in Gloucestershire just. And you can walk back to here, along the river. Thought it'd be lovely. Oh, and more than that, the churchyard in Stanton is particularly wonderful, I've heard. The churchyard and the stained glass. Go and have a look at the stained glass. I'll give thee a packed lunch. And so, my friend writes, I found myself on the train off to sample the local villages and walk back. The weather wasn't too awful. The storms of the night before had given way to a solitary grey sky. Not promising, but not so very cold. I, luck would have it, was sharing the carriage with an old man, a chatty man. You'd not be even around from here, where's you off to? And I told him. And he said, well, make you sure you go and see my barrel. And I said, who's your barrel? Oh, she looks after the great house. There won't be anybody there, but you ask her nicely, she'll show you the chapel. Now, that'd be worth seeing. That'd be, what were they calling it? It was not papist, it was Jacobean, that's what it were. It's a Jacobean chapel. Quite wonderful, I've heard. Quite wonderful, quite remarkable. You go and see that. You go and tell my Beryl that old her dad sent you and said that he's all very healthy and he hopes that she's okay and not been have to put up with anything remotely Catholic, because we know that they and their Gregory singing is just awful, like so many braying donkeys there is, and they might do that in that great house. I will not go on, said Arnold, but you get the measure. Be it as it may. When I arrived in Stanton, I got directions to the great house, and was let in by Beryl. When I told her of her father, she smiled and said, Father can talk, but he's a kind man. I hope he was not an inconvenience to you, sir. And I said, not at all. And she showed me around the house, and it was indeed a fine Jacobean mansion, built by somebody she called Lady Alice, her keen royalist, whose picture she showed in the great gallery. Quite wonderful. Painted just after the Reformation. She had a malevolent smile on, as if the fate of Cromwell and the rest was for her a particular delight. Be that as it may, she then insisted, now we'd better go down and see the chapel, but let me go in first, because the prayer books will be all astray. Now I followed her closely, said Arnold. I followed her closely in. And she was right, although the chapel was kept spotless. The prayer books were all open at a certain page. And I looked at it. It was strange. It said, service for April the 23rd. And it had that murderous psalm as part of the service for that day. Psalm 109. You know the one? I can't say I do, I replied. It's the one that starts up, Be not still, O Lord, for evil men smite your country. Rise up, O God, and punish the sinner. Burn them with thy holy fire. Well, quite a psalm, a battle cry. And I turned to Beryl and I asked her what was happening here. And she said, I don't know, not really rightly. But however often I close those prayer books, they're always awry and always open at the same page. That page there you see, the service for that day, 23rd of April. And that psalm. Always. It doesn't matter how soon. Oh, I just turn my back and they're open, but I never see you do it. And I picked up one of the prayer books. There were 5 in number. Book of Common Prayer, 17th century. Lovely binder. Really beautiful binding. Yes. Hard to match, I would have thought. And then I thought to myself, well, is it before or after the Restoration? Because I knew, said Arnold, I knew that there was a difference in the value of those that are before and those that are after. That's smart. So I turned to the first page. And do you know the date it had in it? No. 1653. And a publisher who was in Holland. But this was an English prayer book. It was never published in Holland. I knew something of typeface. It was an English typeface. I put the book down thoughtfully because I knew 1653 hadn't the order of service changed by the Rump Parliament. So I said to her, that's a strange book. Keep them safe. Nobody will want it in our books. They've been here all the time. They're not valuable. That's what the auctioneer said. Anyway, when the current owners had him round looking for things to sell. Of no value, he said. Common, 17th century. I thought to myself, typical auctioneer. He hadn't even opened it. Well, when I came back to London, I did some researching. And do you know what? I did some researching. And I found all sorts of things about that book. But before I tell you what they are, I better tell you another singular experience that comes to mind. I was at the inn for 3 days after then. It was raining all that time. But on the last day, the day I was due to go home, a little man, clearly a dealer in art treasures, I thought, came in. He gave his name as Van der Bar, and indeed he had a slight accent. And he sidled up to me and said, have you been here a long time? And I told him how long, and he said, I've heard rumours that tucked away in churches, in mansion houses, in all sorts of places, there are treasures that the English do not know of. Have you ever met anything very peculiar in your travels? Because if you have, I will make it worth your while. Worth your while. Now, I have a horror of such men. Men who will despoil the English countryside and sell it. So I, of course, said, no, I've seen nothing. Nothing at all. And Van der Bar laughed and sniggered, as if he was sure I was lying. Now, all that happened, I said, before I went back to London. But when I went back to London, I did my researches, and I found out all about Lady Alice. How she had been the founder of a dynasty. She had made money in the plantations. And built the house in the days of James I, and had been, in her dotage, a proud royalist, who all but fought in the battles, even though she lost her younger son, her beloved son. in the Battle of Naseby. How proud she had been of him. How she refused to accept the new order when it came in. How when Cromwell died, she held a great party, much to the horror of his son, for rumour of it spread throughout Herefordshire, Gloucestershire, even as far as Oxfordshire. How then, when the Restoration happened, she was one of the first to see Cromwell hung, and write in her diary such a wonder, such an returning of fate, such a returning to the path of virtue. Murderous words, but one who no doubt had suffered. And of how, rumour had it, but it had never been actually verified, that she had had printed by some printer in London, using a name in Amsterdam, a prayer book of her own, to keep the services, when all the other prayer books had been burnt in the days of the Rump Parliament. 1653 it was said to have been printed. Now, when you read that, you must have been fascinated. Did you go back and have another look? Well, I meant to, but term came round again very quickly, and I didn't actually get away until just at the beginning of May. You see, I had meant to go there on the 23rd of April. Did you discover the significance of that date? Oh, haven't I told you? That date, with its murderous psalm, which wasn't part of the original prayer book, that date is Cromwell's birthday. She was celebrating then his demise upon the very day that he was born. And I wanted so much to go on that day, but fate wouldn't have it, the examiners' meetings and the rest. So I went then on the 1st of May. I motored down to Herefordshire and found the great house, and there was Beryl, just as I remembered her. "Hello, me dearie, you come to see us?" And I said, "Yes. I've got a feeling those prayer books of yours are very valuable and must be treasured. Do you think they'll just be in the chapel?" "Oh, yeah, they won't have changed. No reason they'd have changed." And she led me then to the chapel. But do you know, strange to say, as she herself remarked, "Hang on, the prayer books haven't moved. I have not been in here in a while, not since the foreign gentleman came. Oh, nearly a fortnight ago it were. But why aren't they open? They're always open. What's happened?" And I picked up one of the prayer books, and it looked exactly the same, really exactly the same as the ones that had always been there. But I opened up the date. It said, very respectably, 1661. And I turned to her and said, "Who was the foreign gentleman?" "Oh, a Dutchman, Van der Bock," I said. Yes, he first came just after you. He looked round the chapel. He seemed excited. He wanted to take the stained glass, he said, and would return when the light built. And he came back a fortnight ago. And with a great many parcels, I loaded them in and I loaded them off. Oh, do you not see what he must have done? He swapped the prayer books over. Oh, the scoundrel! To think that I helped him. To think that I helped him. Do you think I'll get in trouble? Do you think anyone will know? And I said, "No one will know apart from me. No one checks the dates of these books. But he is potentially onto... Oh, he's defrauded you so much. Oh, I wish I hadn't helped him. I can see in my mind's eye as I loaded up his car and that strange thing he had in the back." "What thing?" "Well, it looked like a surplice. I hadn't seen it when he had arrived, but I think he must have had a scarf, a strange silk thing, pale and sickly it looked, lying in the back. I wasn't sure what I would have taken that if I was him, but we hadn't lost one, so it couldn't have been from here." Now, I didn't make much of that garbled account. I merely drove back to London wondering what had happened to Van der Bock. And then I opened my newspaper. "Strange death of antique dealer," it read. And it was the account of two of his porters. It turned out Van der Bock was a very big dealer in antiques and was quite famous in his way. And apparently, according to the porters, he came back from a trip in the country, as he often did go. He came back the other fortnight really, really pleased with himself. And he had us load into the safe a great number of books, well, 5, but they were very heavy, and with them was some strange surplus. I have no idea why he picked it up, a scarf. When we asked him about it, he just said, "Take everything and put it in." And then he locked the safe as if those books were so precious you couldn't believe. Well, days went on. And it were nearly a week ago. Nearly a week ago it happened. I'm strange it took so long to find us. But I suppose the story came out slow and drips and drabs. A week ago, I was sitting here in the porter's office when he came in as breezy can be. It was the 23rd, I remember clearly. He went up to his office and he said, "Stand outside the door. I may need you later. You may need to carry those across the sea. They are very valuable." And then he went in and I heard him click, click, click. And the safe was open. And I did what I do. I looked through the crack in the door because I always like to know what's going on. And I saw him take out one of the books and read it. And there was such a gloating look in his eye. I knew they were very valuable. But just then, something slithered out of the safe. I guess it must have been a serpent. How it got there, I have no idea. And it fastened on his neck. And I ran in. But he had already gone black. And the creature was gone. And surplus had gone. There was just the prayer books there. Well, I bundled them up into the safe. And I clicked it shut. There they are. I don't know the combination. And so there it is. The master, he died of some poison that killed him instantly. Strange musty smell there were. And the books, well, who knows where he got them from, or even how much he paid for them, or whether he paid for them at all. I guess they'll remain an enigma until someone claims them at the last. Did you do the decent thing? Of course I did. As soon as I read that, I went and I explained, and the safe was opened and the books returned. One day, do you know, on April the 24th, I'll go down to that chapel and see what strange rite the old ghost practices that she defends so well. Will you come? Of course not. And I advise you too not to go.